You need me to be louder? Okay, that's fine. It just sounds really loud right here, but I think it's because some of these are pointing in. So I'm in the right crowd, right? I thank you guys for coming. I'm glad some of you came back because it's scary when you go, where is everybody? Well, we decided that we need kind of an information. I know that there was a group for more mature people, and I think it died during COVID or something. I don't know. It may have died before that, but it hadn't been on the schedule in a long time. And just to have a group that we can get together, share information. If there's a topic that you want to hear, I'll go find somebody that can talk about it because it's probably not me. I'm not an expert in everything, even though I play one on TV. But we'll get the last month and this month we'll do is me, but it won't always be me, thankfully. And so we've got the next 3 or 4 months scheduled out, and we've got a Facebook page. Sharon is recording it on Facebook Live. Unfortunately, it's on my personal one that we're going to see if we can figure out how to download and then move it. So if you happen to miss, or I've been told by several people, I volunteer on Wednesday mornings. Can we record it? And I'm like, we'll work on that. So thank you to the ones that volunteer somewhere. Longevity Lab, there's a book that I finished reading recently called Stage, Not Age. And it says if you've met 3 70-year-olds, you've met 3 70-year-olds. Because you've got one who's going to go climb a mountain. You've got one who's starting a new hobby business, and you've got one that's in the hospital all the time. And so, we all know those kind of people. And so age is between here. I get on a Zoom call in the mornings with a group of people that work with seniors mostly. And we were like, well, all these younger, I'm a realtor on the side. Well, I'm a realtor. I do everything. But all these young realtors are like, oh, the baby boomers, that's where all the business is. And we're like, no, not if that's what you think you're aiming for, is just go find somebody to sell their house and get a commission. That's not the way seniors work, because we want to think about it. We want to live in our houses as long as possible, and that's where my specialty is aging in place. It's my degree is interior design, and have done interiors and construction and stuff for years. And ADA was drilled into my head at an early age, and we call it accessible when it's in your home, because ADA is not required in your residence. And did you go measure your bathroom door? No. Your bathroom door is 24 inches. Every single blessed house, from an early house to a new house, bathroom doors are 24 inches, because the bathroom is only 5 feet wide, because the bathtub is only 5 feet long, and a lot of them are shoved back, at the back of the bathroom. You've got room for the counter and to get in. And so they don't want to take any more room unless you're in your master suite or something, but a regular bathroom door is 24 inches. Even in the big bathroom, the bathroom doors are 24 inches. Most of the doors in your home are 32 inches. How many people do you know with a walker? My little grandma would come to see us, and she was in her 90s by then, and she had her walker, but she had to turn sideways and shimmy to get into the bathroom. And once she got into a wheelchair, I was like, you better go before we leave here, because I would go pick her up. And you better go while you're here, because we can't get you in. So our homes are the first place to start. Yes, ma'am.
My sister had one of her bathroom doors enlarged.
Yes.
Bedroom door enlarged for her son.
Yes. And I just had my bathroom redone. Unfortunately, it's on the second floor and it didn't really help, but it didn't have the door swung into the shower. And I'm like, well, if I flip it around, it's either going to flip if I stayed going in, it was going to flip into the countertop. And if I flipped it out, it was going to be in the way in the bedroom. So I put a pocket door in, and I made it 32, which just goes away. It's the only time I shed it is like if I'm in the shower, because my roommate is on the other end of the house and doesn't come up my way, and I don't go her way. Says the lady in purple back there. But yeah, there are things that we can do to work on our homes to improve them. Getting in, zero thresholds. You know, how many of us live in a 2-story house? So I've always had stairs since I was 7. We moved into a 2-story house, and I've always had an apartment that was up or something when I was in school, and so it was always up. And so my goal is to stay in shape so I can go upstairs to my bedroom. But you know, you never know. So that's my thing. We'll do that again sometime because, like Barb said, it kind of came quickly last month, and I know that sometimes communication around here is slower, but we'll do better at getting it out, get the word out. And now that I have all your emails, I'll do better at getting the email out besides the day before. Today, we're going to talk about the greatest gift. In theory. Me and the computer are not getting along today. Here we go. The greatest gift, because what we talk about, you know, whether you have a house, you got family, you got kids, you got stuff. We're going to talk about the greatest gift, and today the answer is not always Jesus. And please, if you have a question or comment or something, pipe up, because I'm better at interactive than just standing here staring at y'all and having y'all stare at me back. I'm not good in a fishbowl. There we go. Maybe. So, are y'all planning a trip this summer? Yeah. And you got all the plans figured out? You know where you're going?
Actually, one of our daughters is inviting us to join her family to a 4-day VRBO in southwestern Missouri.
Does she have room for all of us?
Well, yeah, I don't know how many. She's got 9 kids, so it's going to be...
Oh, no. Thank you, but thanks for asking, but no, I don't want to go. I went one time with my sister when her kids were this big, and 3 girls, and all they did was, and I'm like, shut up, I can't stand it. But we know where we're going, right? Y'all know where you're going next? We're going to see all the sights. We've got our hotel rooms. You've picked out which side of the building you want to be on, so you're away from the traffic and you have the view of the bay or something. We've got our tickets to all the fun stuff to do. You've got your plane tickets figured out, and you've got the concierge to give you a table at that swanky restaurant you saw in all the brochures. But we have spent more time planning our vacations than we have our estates. Most of us, a lot of us. So today's talk is going to be about giving your family peace, man, not pieces. So why it matters. Years ago, Sharon, who's still my roommate and was back then too, we rented half a duplex from this lovely lady, Edith. And she and John had bought a bunch of duplexes. And she had been an art teacher in public school, and John had fought Nazis from Poland and was a resistance fighter, and then moved to the States and met Edith, and they got married. But they never had any kids. And she told me one time, we bought all of these duplexes so we could live wherever we want to when we get old. And we lived next door to her, so she's the landlord, she was next door. John had been a devout Catholic, and he wanted half of their estate to go to the Catholic Church. So that was in their will. She had told me about that. She was a lovely lady, and I don't know, we talked about all kinds of stuff. But I also knew where the will was. It was in the cabinet over there on that wall. For some reason, I don't know why people told me that and why it wasn't somewhere more safe. But John had created a family trust for security with rental property, you don't want to get sued and have them take everything. So he had it all figured out with the trust. What he didn't do was he didn't ever update the trustees, because as a family trust, he was in charge until he wasn't. But the first one had passed away. The second one had passed away. And the only relatives they had left were these two nephews who were both short of screw. And they were in their 60s. They were old enough to know better, but you know what I mean. Edith had felt responsible for them because her sister had died early when these guys were younger, and she had just always kind of looked after them. And Edith was one of those kind of people who, because she was a landlord in this one neighborhood, she went around and made sure that there weren't any scumlords, any of those, there was a couple of apartments that were kind of in the neighborhood sort of, and she managed to get some of them shut down. And when she walked in City Hall to go see her councilwoman, they knew her by name. So she was one of those scrappy people to the end. She was scrappy. Well, eventually, John passed away, and Edith is then in her late 80s. And she never did like to cook. And so she knew so many people. And she had a friend, it was a gentleman. He was probably half her age. He was a married guy. He would come by and he would fix her a little bit something for breakfast, and then he would go to work, and he would swing by at lunch and fix her some for lunch. And because she just needed a little more care at that point. And Sharon and I, at that point, I think we were working like 100 hours a week. We were in some really busy times of what we were doing at the time. And one Saturday morning, I get on the door, and it's Edith in her long nightshirt. And that's all. So we're like, why don't we go back in here? And her friend had a family emergency and had been gone for a couple of weeks. And she had gotten dehydrated. She'd started getting her meds mixed up. Haven't taken those yet. Haven't taken them today. Did I take them this morning? Did I take them at all? So she took more. She just got real confused because her meds were all mixed up. And so she ended up in the hospital. And she asked the nephews to keep up with her dogs. And they would come over and feed them. Well, I was working from home periodically, and I hear open and closing of cabinets. And then I hear, I might be kin to Mrs. Kravitz in another life, maybe, because if I could hear you, I'm standing by the wall. So I heard, looky what I found. And I think they found her will. And they figured out that they're only going to get half. Because once she passes away, the half of it's going to the church. And so when it was time for her to come out, she'd been to rehab for a while as it works. You get to the hospital for a while and get stable, and then they take you to rehab for a while. Well, when it was time for her to come home, they put her in the low rent nursing home. And she was very cognitive almost to the end. So she was still in her 80s by this point. She's like, I didn't ask to be in here. And she called a friend to come get her, and they sprung her and took her home. And so then at some point, they got home health care for her. They set that up through the hospital so that there was a regular person that would come in and talk to her, keep up with her food and stuff. Well, the nephews sued her for her power of attorney. Because we kept going, who's your power of attorney? I'm my power of attorney. And I said, well, what happens if something happens to you? Well, we'll worry about that later. And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. So they sued for power of attorney. And we were in court. And there was about 20 of us on her side. And the two nephews and their lowly little attorney who was wishing she was anywhere else. And the judge talked to several people and said, it's obvious you need a power of attorney. And it's obvious you don't want it to be them. There are law firms that's all they do is keep up with people. And so she assigned this attorney to be her power of attorney. And then the manager of the care home health people was her medical power of attorney because his people were in there. So, this is what happens when you don't have family and you don't have it written down. So that settled that. And so the attorney took over managing her property. She was kind of the point where she couldn't do that very well because she told Sharon and I we could stay for free. We're like, that would be really good, but probably not. But she also, all the bedrooms were upstairs, so they put in one of those chairlifts so she could stay at home because there was a powder bathroom downstairs. So there was no way in this skinny little half a duplex that she was in could she stay downstairs. And so this is part of the aging in place part where they put the chairlift in as they could put a hospital bed up there and she could stay in her home, and she died at 94 at home. But that doesn't always happen that way. This is her long-term caregiver was a lovely lady from Nigeria who called Edith Mama. And she stayed with her for 5 or 6 years. But anyway, so if you don't make these decisions now while you can think about it, someone else will make them for you, and they may not be the way you want them to be. So the greatest gift you can give your children is to have all the plans for your future and their end of life figured out. So I like to pick on Sharon because her mom is still living and mine are not. And so it's easier to pick on her 90-year-old mom who's stubborn, which is where Sharon gets it, if you ever wondered that. She's like, you're just trying to bump me off. And so it's like, well, do you have a will? Yes, it's handwritten, and so it's a holographic will. It does count, but according to my neighbor attorney across the alley from me, it has to be perfect. It has to have all the right ducks in the right places and everything dotted and T's crossed for it to be legal, or it'll be kicked out. And her other daughter, besides this one, says, this is not a John Grisham novel. You can't just copy it out of a book. So, I know not every family gets along. I have 2 younger sisters. I spent most of my time biting my tongue because the youngest one was always the challenge. Isn't the youngest one always the challenge? Unless you're the youngest one, and then it's the oldest one, right? So my youngest sister has been mad at me, unbeknownst to me, for years for something that happened to her when she was a youngster and I was in college. So I think I might have grown up just maybe a little bit since then, but she's just one of those. But she lived in the town with my mother, and so she was the power of attorney and she was the executor. And I was on a need to know text from my mother's whole last several years. And so but thankfully when my father passed away, my mother went ahead and did all of her planning. I don't know, maybe they do a package deal, but she did, got the deal with the same funeral home and everything back in our hometown. And we went back, because she was in Amarillo by then. We went back over there to the funeral home to talk to the people in our little farm town. And we're like, well, what does this headstone look like? Because we didn't even know. And we thought, well, maybe we'll drive out there and look at Daddy's to make sure Mom's matches. And she had a headstone ordered, and it just needed the date. And we're like, thank you for doing this, and we didn't have to do all this. But the most important thing for right now, for all of us in here, is we need to take care of our temples so that we live as long as possible, healthy as possible, and that we can stay in our homes as long as possible. So your handout has all of this stuff. And this is just kind of the step-by-step. And so it's kind of in logical order. And we started with the easy stuff. Do most of you know where your birth certificate is? And if you've been married or divorced, you have all of those certificates. Because sometimes with the houses, you need to be able to prove that that, I mean, some of you have already been through all this. Your affidavit of heirship that that your spouse has passed away. If you want to sell your house, that has to go to title to prove that they didn't just move and you didn't tell anybody and that you want to sell the house and they didn't know it. There's always a case study for all of these things. But these are just some of the easy ones are in step 1, and it's talking about deeds and stuff that we should already know where a lot of these are.
Could you
Yes.
talk a little bit more about the house?
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
usually you have 2 names on the deed.
Yes,
So
and
if one is deceased,
well,
you have to go to probate, or even if you've got a will and all that sort of stuff, and you're the beneficiary.
if you were I know my mother went through a little bit of probate, but since she was the heir, because she was the spouse, then she, didn't cost as much as it would when we went through probate as the kids.
So there's no way to avoid that.
There is.
If the title of your house, if you are joint tenants with your spouse and your spouse has died, then you have rights of survivorship automatically. All you need to do is present a death certificate to affirm that the other joint tenant with you, your husband, is dead, and then the deed is yours. Now, if you're tenants in common or something else, that's a different story. But it depends on what kind of title you have. And normally, married people have joint tenancy for their houses.
So that's the one you want, joint tenancy?
Well, yeah, but you already got it. So
Well, the other part of that is
probably
up until 1972 or 74. I looked it up. 74. Did you know women couldn't have their own credit card without their husband? Y'all know that.
Right.
You couldn't have your own credit card, and you couldn't have a mortgage in your name. So when I go look up people's homes, when I'm trying to I look up the appraisal district first to get just the general information, and it may just have the gentleman's name on there. And I'm like, so there's, once your spouse has died, you need to make sure that you get on the appraisal, on the deed at the appraisal district. And there's another route that that's on a couple of pages over, that's called a transfer on death deed, and it has a kissing cousin called the Ladybird deed. And the Ladybird deed only works in like 5 or 6 states, but of course it does in Texas because we like Ladybird. Either she had something to do with it, or they liked her a lot and named it after her. But what happens there is I can go in and say, when I die, she gets my property. It overrides every will out there, because I've said, and you file it with the appraisal district, and then when I go, you go in there with my death certificate and go, this is it. And they go, okay, we changed it and it's yours. That just happened to a client of mine. I'd sold the lady. I was the listing agent. So I sold this lady the house, and she's in our neighborhood, and she was single. She was in her 30s. And I'm like, she didn't know a soul. She was from New York. And so Sharon and I had her over, and, we invited her to Thrive and the single stuff. She's Jewish. She came to the fun stuff. She wasn't real interested in some of the other stuff. But she didn't know a soul. But by the end of the summer, her younger brother, who had just graduated high school, moved here. And I guess that there was some underlying medical problems that I never knew about. I knew that she'd ended up in the hospital a couple of times. And she called me in October. This house is too big. We need to sell it. And I'm like, okay. But then about that time, she got sick again. And so she's like, let's talk in the spring. And I'm like, that's fine. Well, I get a call from her brother, who's 20. Now, what 20-year-old ever calls anybody? And I had met him a couple of times, but I was like, he called me. And I'm like, hey, Leo, what's going on? Well, she was in the hospital. We need to sell the house now. And what I found out was she had fallen, and she had been on blood thinners, and she had hit her head. I guess she had seizures periodically. She had hit her head, and since she was on blood thinners, she had a brain bleed. They could not stop, and they could not do surgery. And at 34, she passed away. But in this gap in the fall, when she knew something was wrong, they went down and put the 20-year-old on doing what I just say?
TOD.
Transfer on death deed, and filed it. And I'm like, what the heck? I found that, and I was like, that's really odd for people this young to have something figured out. He slid right in. He didn't have to go through probate. He didn't have to go through any of at 34, do you think she really had a will? But somewhere in there, somebody got word to her about that. And she was one of these highfalutin CPA types that did a lot of corporate taxes and stuff. So she may have heard about it through that or school. Who knows where she heard about it. But I was like, that's the way to go, is if you've got somebody that you just want to, the other one is a trust. And that's, we're moving along. There's several different kinds of trusts. So in a will, here's the paper that says, I'm in my right mind, and here's what happens to my collection of Cabbage Patch dolls and everything else. But you still got to go through probate to do all that. But if you have a trust, you have a trustee that is not you, and they can do stuff for you. But this is how all the wealthy people transfer all of their property and all that stuff, is it's in a trust, and it just slides through their multiple generations, and they don't have to pay, they pay taxes and all that stuff, but it goes through maybe a different function. I mean, the trust has its own money section and all, but you can transfer property in that, and you are the beneficiary of it, but you're not the trustee. And I just am working with a little family. They made a special trust, special use trust or something, because the mama's starting to have dementia, and they wanted to make sure the daughter could take care of the property. And so we're selling the property, but she signs as trustee. It's in her mom's name, special use trust with her name on it, and then the daughter signs as trustee. And we're going to sell mom's house because she has moved in with the daughter because she's starting to get dementia. So this is why we have attorneys to do some of these. But it's not just your average attorney. There's estate attorneys, and there's elder law attorneys, and there's estate planning attorneys. Some of them will do both, but the estate attorneys are really good at going, you might look at this option, you might look at that option, but they know the ins and outs of that, and they know all the legal rules and stuff that I picked up on the back of a bubblegum wrapper. But you can also talk to, there's some financial planners that specialize in mature adults. We haven't ever quite figured out what to call our group. Seniors, elder, most people don't like being elderly. That's kind of an old school term. But what'd you call us? Seniors works. It's kind of been working.
Christy, that deed thing,
Mhm.
does that only apply to housing or anything that has a title?
I think you can do it with what I read up was also you can do, I think it's on one of these others, you can do your bank account, pay on death bank account.
Okay. What is that?
So that one would be, it's on number 5. We're flying through some of these, but like if you've got a son or daughter and you're like, okay, this is where the money goes, instead of having to go through, and it also works where, okay, if I die, who's going to be able to get into I'm single, so who's getting into my account to pay for the funeral or all the other stuff? Because, who am I going to leave it to? I've got 5 nieces and nephews, and, which one of them's the nicest to me? So you can do pay on death bank accounts. I know Sharon's mom, her sister is on all of you are, aren't you?
All 3 of us are on.
All 3 kids are on all the bank accounts that her mother has, so that they all have equal. They can get into the bank account in case something happens.
That's joint.
Joint.
They're on a joint. But But you can also have TOD for any kind of financial instrument. So if you have IRAs or whatever else, you can have, or even stocks and bonds, you can have it listed as a TOD. Basically, even if you have a will, if you have TOD, those things automatically go to the person designated, and they don't go into probate. They don't go to your state, so the will doesn't govern it, and it doesn't go into probate.
Yeah. I don't know why we don't know more about this.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Because it's like, I think the lawyer, who makes the money on the probate? The attorney?
Yeah, the attorneys, because they have to go to court and they have to go through that process with things that are not TOD. Like, for instance, you may have a lot of stuff like artwork or cars or different other kinds of things that aren't TOD, and that will go to your state, and then it has to be governed by the will. But if you have TOD or you have even beneficiaries, then it bypasses that.
Yeah, I think that's stuff that we need to look into. Not necessarily, because I think you can just go down. There's a form.
Yeah, you just go to the bank.
Co-ownership, is that the same thing? Yeah.
If you have a Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard, all those things, and you have any kind of financial instrument, whether savings, checking, any other, IRAs, stocks and bonds, you go and you tell that financial institute that's managing that for you, I want this to TOD, and this is the person I'm designating, whatever else, and they'll just set it up for you. You don't need a lawyer for that.
Right.
Well, and you need a beneficiary on everything, so that if something happens, you can't go to any of your. You would have a beneficiary on it anyway, but you need to designate that it's a TOD. Otherwise, you just say, okay, my third cousin gets this stock if I die, or account. Because I used to put my mother on everything until she wasn't around. And then, depends what it is. Sometimes it's Sharon.
So I have a state on a couple of brokerage accounts, and I really need to designate a person, is what you're saying.
Yeah, there needs to be at least a beneficiary, but if you put a TOD at the front of it, then it will go and transfer directly.
Bypassing probate.
Yeah.
In a will.
Okay, so I need to take care of that on a couple of the accounts.
Yeah, and I think that, we just need to start. So, I think there's some stuff that doesn't qualify for that. If, like you said, artwork and some of those collectible kind of things. My cabbage touched off.
Things that are not divisible.
Yeah.
Or like we have 6 children, and it's very difficult to have one fund, if you will,
right,
and split it 6 ways and list it that way. So in some of those things, we just say it's going to go to our estate, and then it will be governed by the will, and that means it has to go probate, and that means some things will be delayed a little bit, and we do get a lawyer for that, but some things just don't lend themselves to having this goes to this person.
Have you looked into something like a trust to see how that would iron out?
Yeah, we looked into that. We just didn't want to go that way.
Yeah,
okay.
The confusing thing, or the thing about it, I thought that sounded like a really good idea, except I understood that you still have to manage it. Like,
somebody does. Yeah, there has to be a trustee.
And that started sounding like a lot.
But sometimes a trustee isn't you.
Yeah, well, figuring out who is a lawyer.
It's somebody you trust. Because there's all kinds of stories. It's always the rich Hollywood people that somebody ran off with their money. And that they're I think one I remember is Doris Day. I mean, because she started that last series. She was older when she had that last TV show, and it's because she was out of money. Because her, I think it was her manager had not done well with her money, and then her son was like, "You need to say yes to this offer because you need the money." And so, yeah. Yes. If you say revocable and then you say, I'm really aggravated with my son. He didn't behave the way he was supposed to. I'm taking him off. That's revocable. If you do it irrevocable, you're stuck with it. You can't change it. And so sometimes when, like dementia, you want them to be non-revocable, because if they are in their last thread of knowing where they want the stuff to go and how they want things to work, you don't want somebody coming in there later and going, yeah, they didn't really know what they're talking about. We need to change it. Because sometimes they change it. This is why we have elder abuse lawyers, because people come in and they do stuff to people, and sometimes it's your family. It's your deadbeat nephews that want to file you away so they can sell your properties before you're dead and take your money. So at the very least, we need to put a beneficiary on your accounts, your financial accounts. But the ones that you can, transfer on death to where they go. And I know we've got several attorneys in our church who would love to help you. Huh? I'll tell you afterwards. One of them was here last month. So one of the things, one of the ladies, I'm not going to say her name. Anyway, she's in the church, and she came up to me and she said, because her husband had passed away a few years ago, and she's the one that was talking about, you need to get the house changed into your name. You need to get your insurance changed into your name, because, that if it was all done before, you were a co-signer kind of thing, you have to reapply for your homestead exemption. She said it wiped hers out. When she re-registered, it wiped her homestead exemption out.
That's if you're changing the title.
Yeah, if you change the title to be just your name, because it's considered almost a new thing. And then some of her utilities, she had to come up with her marriage certificate to update the electric bill and stuff. And so even if both names were on it, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And so these are things the reason to keep some of these documents handy. And it's, do you keep it in a fire safe? I got some of my stuff in a fire safe. Is it safe? I don't know. Can I find it? Maybe it's at the back of the closet. Is it sturdy enough to last through the LA fires? I don't know. I don't know what heat ratios those things are, how much do you spend on them? Or do you get it in a wall safe? I saw the house a couple of years ago. It had a wall safe in the closet, and when they were selling it, here's the combination. I don't know how to change it. This was the combination when they got it. I'm like, I don't know how safe that is. They moved to Arizona, so I would think that the people that bought it was like, okay, maybe we're safe. They're not going to come and break into the closet. Or do you take it to a safety deposit box? Problem with the safety deposit box is you need to have somebody besides just you who can get into it. Because just because you had kids, they may not be able to get into it. And if you have a power of attorney, the power of attorney quits the minute you died, because then it becomes the executor. And so if you put your will in your safety deposit box, what's going to happen to it? They have to go through the bank people and...
If you have a lawyer that is just going to do up your will for you, let's say, and it's not a very complicated will and everything, most of the time those lawyers that do it, they have a safe in their office.
Good deal.
And they say, would you like me to hold your important documents, all these things listed right here, and they will keep it for you in case that you or your survivors need it. So that's one way to do it.
Does she know where that is? Does she know the lawyer?
Well, actually, a little sidebar, we used to have Jim Kennedy as our lawyer.
Right.
And he retired. Now, we live in Grapevine, and his office is way out in North Dallas and everything, so we're in the process of looking for a a state lawyer, if you will, to be able to handle it when one of us dies and to have it in his savings.
Do your kids?
We're in process of that.
Do your kids know where it is? The attorney.
Documents? Well, yeah, right now they're in our house, but if we had a massive fire, I suppose,
Right.
I suppose they'd burn out. But I'm willing to live with that for the next couple of months until we get a lawyer.
I'm on this call in the mornings every morning, and one of the ladies, she lives in Maryland, and she's like, but she was from LA, and her parents lost their house. They were in their 80s or 90s. They were up there, and they lost their family home, and several of her siblings lost their complete home. And so she flew from Maryland out to try to just help figure out, what are we going to do with people and stuff. And yeah, so it's just a mess, but you never know. Did you spell my name right? Yeah. Right. And that's the thing that's so handy now. I mean, I dabble on Ancestry, and every now and then there's a will on there that I can't hardly read from somebody that wrote. I can read cursive. Well, I can read cursive, but I can't write cursive because I couldn't write cursive when I was in school. But it's hard to know what they're saying and how to spell names. But now we are so digital that the lawyers probably scanned it all too. Yeah, they get in there. They don't want all that paper anymore. They scan it all, and then they put the file in the safe, the backup files, and they'll back them up, I don't know, every day, every week, whatever they need to do, so that they always have a current copy of everything they're working on. And it's easy for us to keep a copy of that too. Now with cloud-based storage, doesn't matter where you are. I'm a fan of Gmail and Google, because I was a Crackberry years ago. I had my BlackBerry, and then I got another BlackBerry, and it transferred just fine, all my contacts and all that good stuff. And then I got the third BlackBerry, and they had changed the operating system, and it didn't move nicely. And I was like having to retype contacts, and I was really aggravated. So I got them all into Google Contacts and Google Calendar, Google everything, and it's all in the cloud, and I can be on my phone, my computer, my tablet, Sharon's phone, Sharon's computer. If I log into my stuff, I can get to all my storage of all my files and stuff. And so we need to take advantage of some of that. Jasmine will be down here in a little bit. She'll be down here in about 15 minutes. But she's our technology person. For you ladies that were, when we did the Rejoice, Jasmine is the lady that worked with the senior ministry and planned a lot of it, right? Yeah. You're supposed to go, She was the point person. Yeah. But her thing is technology, and she has a heart for seniors, which is, I always get amused when a 30-year-old has a heart for seniors, but she likes, you can ask her story sometime, that she just felt the calling for that and has started a company. And she will be the speaker for our July, because she is quitting her other day job and will be full-time working with technology and seniors and stuff. So she's going to do a technology minute at the end of all of our programs each month, and then but July, she's it. So if you need something, because you need to understand how does the cloud-based stuff work, she can help you figure that out. Some of this stuff needs to happen before we go. Like, let me get back up here. Your medical stuff. I know my mother ended up with Alzheimer's, and I knew that she was slipping. She was pretty good when she was on the phone, but when I would go visit with her is when I noticed, things weren't quite clicking. And it was one of those mornings I was sitting there eating breakfast, and it's the only time I ever read the papers when I was going to Amarillo, because my mother got the paper every day. And I'm reading the paper, and she's opening the cabinet, and I'm like, what are you doing? I'm trying to put the oatmeal away. She ate oatmeal every day, forever. I eat oatmeal every day, forever. Sharon goes, how come you eat oatmeal every single day? And I went, because I always have. But she, at that moment, could not remember what, and I went, it's to your right. And she went this way. And I went, your other right. You know, we made it funny. She was always kind of a jovial person and laughed about stuff, but she was starting to forget stuff and run into stuff with the car and the back trunk. Thankfully, she had run into something and the trunk wouldn't close. And so the little light didn't go out, which was a good thing because it ran the battery down. And she's like, would you look at my car and see why it won't start? And so I was like, yeah, sure. Oh, Dee, the batteries are down. But she had a little bit of vertigo about that time. And so I'm like, well, you know you're not supposed to drive while you got vertigo. And she said, yeah. And I said, well, why don't we wait till you get better and then we'll look at it. And so, you know, it was like that. But I was standing there one day when my sister walks in and she's like, and I'm going to put these keys right here in this drawer because you won't remember that I did it. You see this going? You be nice to your mother. But yeah, so what do you do before that step? So this is why we need, you know, your power of attorney. What do you want to happen? A lot of people think, well, you know, when I get tired of my house, I'm just going to go down here to the fancy care community on the corner and then I'll just check in. Well, they may not have a bed. They may not have a bed for months. But they do have a long waiting list. And what they do with the waiting list at most care communities is they go down and go, Audrey, we've got a vacancy. You know, are you ready to move in? No, I'm going on a trip and I'm busy and, you know, okay, well, we'll call you next time around. They don't move you to the bottom of the list. They keep you in your spot, but they just go down the list and they call. And when you're ready, then you're like, okay, I'm ready. And then you can go and move in. But the other part of that is you need to be, we've got independent living. We'll get this on another day. But we've got independent living where it's little houses, cottages, or little apartments and stuff. And you can come and go as how you want to. Assisted living, you just need a little bit of help. Maybe in the mornings. But most of the time they can leave you alone for 4, 5, 6 hours. But the good part of that is get your meals. How many of you don't like to cook anymore? Yeah, my cook's back there, and so I'm shot if so I'm looking for tall, dark, and handsome that can cook, because if I trade off that one, then I need somebody that can cook. But they make your meals. You've got social things if you want to, or you've got your apartment if you want to be on your own and you want to watch all your soaps by yourself. But then you've got skilled nursing and memory care. Those are the 4 levels. Well, if you start to become a fall risk, they're going to move you from assisted living to skilled nursing because they can't have you falling in your room when they don't check on you but every 4 or 5 hours. And so to get into some of these have all 4 levels in one community. The one my mother was in Amarillo, they were basically several blocks worth of buildings. And so you just moved from one to the next. And so they were building the memory care. And so as soon as that was ready, she moved across the street into the memory care building. But you need to think about some of that ahead of time. Now, I can help you stay in your house as long as possible. Make sure you've got grab bars and you've redone your bathroom we learned last month, you got to put blocking in the walls. I went to a networking meeting a couple of days after we had that last month, and Jasmine had come with me. And this guy walks up to me and he says, I'm supposed to tell you that we put blocking in our walls in the bathroom before we put the grab bar, because he was a home builder for D.R. Horton. But I'm like, well, good. Jasmine was listening. We had blocking in the walls, because if you do a suction cup, That thing will fall off of there. And if you've grabbed that when you have stumbled, you and it are going, and you may be going somewhere else, you know. And so there's a lot of things that just plan out your, the whole point of today is to be more planned. So my dad was very frugal, is the nice way to say stingy, cheap, tidy. He was the tail end of he was a farm kid on the tail end of the Depression. And so he was number 6 out of 7. So his family was very frugal with everything. His oldest brother was 16 years older than him, and he was really close to the brother and the wife, his sister-in-law. She had been his second grade teacher. And so it was kind of second mom. And they lived across the alley from us in our little farm town. And when my uncle passed away, my dad went with his sister-in-law to go get the arrangements. And I came home for the funeral, and he gets me, because I'm the oldest, "Don't you dare spend that much money on me. You just get me a simple pine box." We watched too many Westerns at our house. What we learned later was the pine boxes are really nice, and they cost more than the aluminum ones. Steel or whatever they're made of. But he was like, "That's just highway robbery." And by the time he passed away, he had figured out that cremation was so much cheaper, and that's what we did. And we were like, "Okay, so where do you want the ashes?" "Just sprinkle them in the backyard." And we're like, "Really?" "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay." So we 3 girls, it's like, what do you do? We had, it was new to all of us. We all got a serving spoon. And we're like, "Hey, there's the grill. There's the garden. There's the lawnmower." It sounds irreverent, but what do? You got to figure it. Some people have all these elaborate. The funny one was my uncle, and when his wife passed away, different uncle, he and the daughter, she had driven this 20 miles to the next town as a bookkeeper for years and years and years, and they thought, well, let's spread her ashes on the road from here to there. What happens when you roll down the window in your car and you spit? So they get back to town and they're like, "What is all over you and the car?" "Mother." Because the ashes just blew all back up. So you got to laugh at stuff, because it's like, why, you can get upset, but yeah. The point is, make a plan. I asked Sharon, who's my best bud, "Do you know what song I want at my funeral?" And she came up with the song, mostly. And I said, "What version?" And she was like, Well, we had been in a jazz band for 20 years at our old church, and we played How Great Thou Art as a bolero. Dum, da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum, da-da-da. And I love it. It was the Barry sax lead. And so I'm like, that's it. That's what How Great Thou Art's always been my favorite hymn. We don't do hymns much around here. But do you know what you want at your service? My mother had hers written out because she had it all figured out, and my grandmother had hers figured out, and my job with my grandmother was to find the recording of this particular song, because my mother didn't know how to do that. Yes? Yeah, they've got a bunch of different varieties. Sharon bought her mother one, and so she thought, well, she would buy all the siblings one, because they're still trying to get mom at 90 to do something. And she got me one. And this one is called Where I Buried the Bodies, and other things you need to know when I'm gone. But there's a bunch. If you get to this page on Amazon with any book like this, there's a jillion of them in there with flowers on them, or, they're girly, or they're guy. And there's Jasmine. And, they've got one thing that Jasmine will tell you is you got to keep your passwords and stuff. And where do you keep all your passwords? It does. It's a prompter. Yes. Yeah, and I was helping an attorney friend of mine. He his well, the gentleman had passed away in a car wreck, and he was trying to help settle the estate. And there was a house, and he had some children and stuff like that. Nobody knew where any of the stuff was, and finally, they got the right in their digging for all of this information because they knew he had several vehicles, but did he? And they finally got a hold of a cousin. Well, apparently when they went, once he was deceased, something he had on him gave it all to the cousin to keep up with, and he had all the passwords and stuff. And then it's like, oh, there we go. Now we can get into his stuff. But you got to have somebody that knows where the passwords are, or you won't get to your cloud storage. It's how many stories are do y'all understand cryptocurrency? I don't know, just enough to be dangerous and not. So it's all online. All your money's online. I mean, you have a crypto coin, but it's not really a coin. It's really all online. You have passwords for all of it. If you lose the password, you've lost your money. And I'm like, I'm just not quite that brave yet. I mean, you can buy a house with cryptocurrency. And I'm like, and the title companies will take it. But I'm like, I don't think I want to do that. But the main thing is don't leave your family on a scavenger hunt. So whether you have it in a book or something else, the main thing is to get everything planned. Get your ducks in a row. And done is better than perfect. Just start. Our handout is kind of in a logical, chronological, easy to more difficult order. Just start. And make sure that your family, somebody knows how to find everything, how to get into your stuff, where to find your will, whether you have it in a home safe or a safety deposit box. But the main thing is to have that talk, where Sharon's mom doesn't want to have that talk. They keep trying to, she keeps arguing about it. But if you don't, then, don't surprise your family after you've gone with something that pops up. This young lady that passed away, so they were Jewish. I did not know anything about Jewish death, funerals, all that. They had a graveside. And I went to that, and that was my first Jewish service. Well, apparently they prefer to bury you the next day, except she was an organ donor. So she was brain dead on Thursday, and they thought they would be able to get her body the next day. All the family had flown in, and they thought, well, then they figured out they might get her body by Monday. She's technically still alive because she's plugged in so they can harvest her organs. And they didn't get her body till Tuesday, and the service was Wednesday. And so, it was a surprise to them to learn that she had signed up to be an organ donor, because they did not know that until they're like, okay, can we have the body now, and we can go continue on our way and have our service. And so, that was part of her wishes. And a lot of times we think, oh, this is morbid. But it's mercy. It's mercy on the people left behind to have it planned out. Y'all been to funerals. Y'all had your own families and parents and stuff who've moved on. People aren't at their best, and they're not the most clear-headed, especially if it's shocking. And so it's better to have everything written down and have it all planned out. And so the greatest gift isn't what you leave behind. It's not, oh, here's $1 million. It's the love and the thoughtfulness that you put to prepare to get your ducks in a row. So don't wait till something catastrophic happens and everybody's trying to wait. We brought something to give you a head start, and Sharon will pass them out.
I have a question though.
Yes?
What if the lawyer or attorney who made the original will, which doesn't need any changes at this time, has gone out of business. Is that,
Do you have the will?
yes, they have the will.
I think if you have the will, you don't have to worry about it.
I'm just saying, I mean, like,
Yeah. I mean, it's kind
it's
of,
still valid, I'm assuming, just
Right.
the attorney went out of business. But
Yeah.
they have the original.
well, it's like a lot of legal stuff. I don't need the title company that closed the house. I don't need the mortgage company that I bought the house from as long as they paid. I get surveys. You know, when you buy a house, you get a survey. And some of these stamps are old. And they're not around anymore. But it's still a legal survey stamp. And so, you know, it's just, as long as you have a copy of it and it's a valid copy, then thank you. So these are a shortcut. They're a magnet. You can stick them on the side of your refrigerator. You can put your name, rank, and serial number on it. I would write the permanent stuff in ink and the rest in pencil because it's your emergency contacts. A lot of the EMS people know to look for this. So if you're diabetic or you've got something that you take that they need to know about, then you can put that on here. It'll give you, it puts your pharmacy, they know they can go find it. Yes?
One of the things that should go with that is your DNR.
Yes. And it, I don't know if that's on here. It should be.
But you have to have your original signature and everything.
But you could probably fold it up, however you get it there, or take a picture of it.
It asks if you have it and where is it located.
Because the EMTs, when they come in, need to know.
Yeah, they need to know. And that's like, even like my mother, when she was in the nursing home, she had dementia. And it's not like, I mean, she couldn't remember a whole lot. And there wasn't any of the nieces and nephews that were getting close to an age where, I mean, they still aren't married. And so there wasn't any reason for her to stick around, you know what I mean? They weren't saving her for some kind of, oh, here the baby's coming or something, you know. And my sister finally put her on Do Not Resuscitate and put her on hospice. And they quit shuttling her down to the hospital every time she had a sniffle or something. But, you know, this gives you a lot of them. That gives you plenty of room to add more. Something that I've heard recently, being I'm the mom of a feisty 3-year-old Doberman, is put that I have a dog. So if they run off with you and you're the only one there, I have a dog or a cat that either somebody, the next of kin, you know, whoever their emergency contact is needs to know, come get my dog. The other one was, if you are the, we'll say, healthier spouse and you're living and your spouse has dementia and lives with you and they shouldn't be alone, that needs to be on there. So if they come and shuttle you off to the hospital, don't leave my husband by himself. He shouldn't be left alone. Yes.
That reminds me of Gene Hackman.
Yes, exactly.
And their dog. That was so sad.
It was. And that has gotten a lot of attention in the senior community because he was 95. She was a lot younger. She was in her 60s. And the other part of that is if you start getting something, because they got on her computer, she was starting to look for, she was typing in her symptoms, but she had something, you know, hantavirus, which is transmit. The last time I heard of that was we went to Yosemite years ago, and they're like, this campground has this, stay away, it's got mice, blah, blah, blah. And that's what they were spreading. And we didn't camp, so we weren't real worried about it. But, you know, if they weren't real careful with their, you know, they lived more in a wooded area, it looked like from the photos. And if they had mice that were getting in and out, and apparently the doors were open because 2 of the dogs were coming and going. And the reason the other dog passed away, it was in its crate.
Yeah.
But yeah, when she passed away,
And he didn't, he had dementia.
he had nobody to keep up with him for another week or more because they tracked his pacemaker because it it fires off and they can tell our electronics know exactly where you are at every moment. Big Brother follows you everywhere. He knows that all 3 of my devices are within 5 feet of each other right now. But she was in her 60s. And so, you wouldn't think, I think they all knew he was not doing well, but she was in her 60s and she was doing fine. So it's like, no big deal. But the handyman hadn't seen him in a while. And the door was open, and when they went in, they were just freaking out because then they found his body. I think they found him first, and she was on the other side of the house from where they found him. But that goes with, I know Sharon would never cheat, except when she's working and she's got her Apple Watch that tells her to stand up, and she's busy, and she does this. But if she's playing with Otto, who's a feisty 3-year-old Doberman, and she gets in the floor too quickly, it goes, "Did you fall?" I think you and I had this conversation about your Apple Watch, because it does that when you get in your garden and you get over, you get down and you pick something up, or you get on the ground to dig around, and it's like, "Did you fall?"
And what if you had? Do you say yes?
You can talk to it. Can't
If you don't respond, it's supposed to call for you. There's an SOS, and you have to hit this yes. You're okay.
Jasmine, tag you're it. Give us some good things about technology that goes along with this.
All right.
This is Jasmine Skinner. When she called me the first time, and I was like, "Do you have a website or a resume or something?" 'Cause I was like, I don't know anybody's last name. I'm doing good to know your first names.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Christy.
I shall take my tea in. Oh,
Okay.
wait.
Oh, I have one.
This is the room one.
Oh, okay.
Except that
You don't have to worry about it.
you talk loud?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. So my name is Jasmine Skinner, and I am sharing a tech minute with you all related to estates, wills, and planning that you all have talked with Chrissy about today. So I want to share with you all about a feature called Legacy Contact. How many of you have heard about this feature? Anyone? Okay, so Apple has this feature available.
I didn't get your slides up.
Oh,
Do you have them on your thing?
I do. I don't know if anyone
Does it have an
can see.
HDMI?
No.
Okay.
That's okay. So Apple has this feature called Legacy Contact, where you can choose someone to have access to your data after your death. And so if any of you have an iPhone with you, and if you want to follow along, I can share the steps with you. So if you go to your settings on your iPhone, that's the little gear icon that's gray and black. I can show you exactly where it is. And then tap on your name, so your iCloud name, and then tap on Sign In and Security. And you should scroll to the bottom, and you should see an area called Legacy Contact. So that's where you'll go. And this is a really great feature because you can share your legacy contact, and it'll create an access key for anybody that you want. And so upon your death, they just need your death certificate and your access key to your legacy contact, and they can access your entire iCloud account, your photos, documents, all of that. And so that avoids having to contact Apple and go through a 6 month to a year-long process to get your passwords or anything. So this is a great way to pass on your information if you use Apple accounts and iCloud. And so you can designate more than one legacy contact. It doesn't just have to be one person, and they don't even need to have an Apple account. So you can, mainly the two important things to have are the access key and the death certificate. And so when you set this up on your phone, it'll give you the option to send this to someone who has an Apple account or to print off the access key. And then that way you can put it in any files, any binders that you may begin organizing. And so anyone that you want, they can just need your death certificate and access key, and they have access to all of your Apple account information. So I think that's really neat. Other services that offer something similar is also Google. Google has something similar if you use Google for various things. Unfortunately, some other digital accounts that do not have this are Microsoft, Instagram, and Twitter, or now known as X. And so if you use any of those, please know you'll need to find a backup solution to share that information in case of your incapacitation or family members' incapacitation. And then also Facebook and LinkedIn have a version of this, but it's more like, oh, they'll memorialize your account, or you can have someone access it and shut it down for you. So again, Apple and Google have this legacy contact feature, but Microsoft, Instagram, and Twitter do not at this time. Hopefully they'll come out with something like this in the future. And then Facebook and LinkedIn, they have a version of this, but it's not as robust as Apple or Google's versions right now. Was anyone able to find it? Yeah, did y'all find it? Okay, wonderful.
I found something similar on Android because.
Oh, really?
Android's better.
Oh no, the Apple and Android debate.
Hang on, I'll shut it.
So that is something that you all can do today to set up today and let your friends or family members or whoever you want have access to that information. So before I wrap up, I have some legacy resources for you all. So if you're interested, you can scan this QR code. And it will give you 2 downloads. So an identity checklist that I put together for you all. So like Chrissy talked about in her presentation, a way to help organize all of your documents. And then I love that you have this idea called the family love file. And so Christy mentioned that in her presentation. So if you want to download this checklist, it's a PDF. You can print it out, or you can check, it'll have a digital copy, print copy, black and white, and color. So you can keep yourself organized as you're organizing documents, and you don't have to, find a place you don't have to get confused on where you left off. And then also, just a digital legacy guide. It just gives you an overview of what your digital legacy is, how you can start organizing it and protecting it, going along with what Chrissy has shared with you all today. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to scan the QR code or talk with me afterwards.
And if you need to know how to scan, well, we should know how to, after COVID, we should know how to get to every menu out there. But if you need help, she can help you get on there.
Any questions?
You were talking about Instagram and Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any of those accounts, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought that's where people go on and give their opinion about this or that.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing you would need on death would be if you had your own program or channel on those things.
Yes.
That's the only time somebody would need to access that. They don't care about your opinions about
No, so yeah, if you had photos on there, or if you had a Twitter or an X account, because you're really into gardening or something and you wanted your family to have access to that, they would need the username and password to get that information, and even just to delete it. If you don't want it to linger around after your family member, is no longer with you, then you need to have the login so you can delete it. And so they are just not keeping that information. So that's the only thing to keep in mind for some of those. Mm-hmm. Anything else? No? Okay.
One thing about the legacy account,
yes.
It presupposes that you have to be dead.
Yes.
So,
minor detail.
no, I'm raising my hand. What if I start getting really fuzzy? I'm not dead,
right.
but I'm becoming capable of managing stuff.
Uh-huh.
And so I would want Barbara to be able to know enough to be able to get at our stuff, which right now I'm managing our stuff. But I want her to be able to have the passcodes and everything. Like she knows knows the passcode to get into my phone and do all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I want her to because I may be in a point of being incapacitated but not dead.
Mm.
Whereas somebody like a child or a nephew, which you talked about,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you trust them when you're dead, but maybe you don't want to trust them when you're still alive.
I didn't trust them when they're dead.
Yes. So yeah, I'm not sure how much access someone would have like before you die or you're incapacitated or fuzzy, like you said. It's just a backup feature there for you. So yeah. Okay, well, thank you, everybody.
So I've put on your tables what we call
No worries.
the lab report. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a little feedback and anything you're interested in, that we can find somebody, we'll schedule them later. And then next month we have Mr. Steve Benton. He's with the Senior Source. They're an organization that they got all kinds of stuff going, but he's going to come and talk about our financial safety and scams. And so he will be here next month. But what I learned, yes, ma'am.
You know, just a suggestion, you were talking about falls, and of course, when
Yes.
you get our age, you go to the doctor, that's one of the things they ask.
Have you fallen lately?
Have you fallen in the last year, last 6 months or something? You know, I mean,
It needs your password. So choose the person you would like to have.
Right.
if you had to do balance work or balance exercises, so if you had somebody that
Oh, here you go, sir.
talk about things
Oh, okay. Choose a phone number.
How about August?
There you go.
We have Mr. Todd Whitthorne, who will be with us in August.
No problem. So yes,
He's-
sir, you can
He talks about all kinds of health and
download the
exercise and
checklist
stuff. I don't know.
here
We
and
haven't
then
quite
download
nailed
the
down
guide
what he's going
here,
to talk
and
about.
it'll
We just
save
got
it
him
to
on the
your
book.
phone.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Well, I mean, you know,
There you
But
go.
yes,
balance
You did it?
exercises,
Well, halfway.
stuff like that.
well, and
No, I didn't get
one
that
of the
far.
things they've talked about dementia is it's
Yes,
one
sir.
of the precursors
go back
is
to
shuffling your feet.
Safari.
And I don't have any idea why, but they're talking about if you can do exercises on your toes to keep yourself going.
Did it open? Do you swipe? Okay, there we go. So let's go back here
Yes.
and then download that one. So now you have both of them here.
Okay.
And you can just click here, and then if you want to get back to it, click on that button.
Yes, I'll post something like that on. I think I've posted a couple of articles. We've got a Longevity Lab Facebook page. If you want to join it, I've been posting stuff, and if you see a good article or something, then y'all can post on there.
Hi, Al.
I'm
Hi,
less
Paul.
apt at this than here.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. Oh, there you go.
That was it?
Yes, sir. That's
Now
all.
what do I do?
So here's the checklist and then the guide. So you can just tap it,
Sharon?
and it'll download to your phone.
So thank you guys for coming today. Sharon tells me to sign off.
Download. There we go.